Dear everyone, I'm very happy to welcome on our 31st lecture of our group Hope Recycling Session, Anna Boghiguian, an artist who was born in Egypt in an Armenian family and studied economics and political science at the American University in Cairo in 1969, where she learned painting from the Egyptian artist Fouad Kamel. And when her family emigrated to Montreal, she continued her arts education at Concordia University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in fine arts and music. But she lost her hearing at this time. Since then, her ear has been a recurring motif in her work, alternating in a metaphysical, organic, social, and sensory sense, as in the installation Guild Machine, or at the canvas, or on the canvas mapping the ear. Nomadic artist Anna Boghiguian travels the continents and fills mountains of sketchbooks with drawings. Inhabited by the sounds of cities and earthquakes, she develops a hybrid and poetic work combining painting, drawing, collages, sculptures, installations, and stories to create a mental, emotional, and physical cartography of the world. Her travels greatly nourish her practice between a travel diary and a private diary. Her production, inspired by literature, is interspersed with words taken from personal stories or borrowed from games, newspapers, mythological or historical stories.
This is an image from a 2000 and I think 2008. I'm not sure exactly the year, but it's either 2007 or 2008, and it's about the Nile, and it's about the man in the Nile boat who is covered, who is surrounded by curtain, and he is in his night boat, and the floor is like a bloodshed, or a kind of red floor. I used to like red at that time. So he's covered, he's sitting on a red wooden base, and his boat is covered with curtains. And it's on the Nile. He's cruising the Nile River. This is a photograph of an Indian man, and I took it at the same time I was studying in Shanti-Nikitan when I was doing the work on Tagore. And this is a man there that I photographed, and it's like a bird and like a spirit. And I painted it, and the painting is like a collage. For me, the photograph becomes part of a collage with different realities. And this is inside the train, it's untouched, and it is a man who is traveling in Shanti-Nikitan. This is much before, this is 1990, and it's a cutout of a person, it's like an icon of St. George on a donkey, and he's trying to find, I suppose, the dragon. And it is like a puppet because it moves around, and it's not static. Because according to my knowledge, puppets are what moves, while cutouts are not puppets because they are stable and they don't move. They have just one piece. This is a study of interior of Cavafy's house in Alexandria, 2011, and it's a study of it, of the door of his entrance and the circular of the vicious circle of life. While here there is Anthony, and there is here the different sailors who have passed by. These are my students who took the sail that I have bought from a boat here in Egypt, and we made the symbol of the palm tree and the crocodile, which is the symbol of Nim, the city of Nim, which was established because when Octavius had a fight with Cleopatra and Antony at the Battle of Actium, and they lost the battle, and Augustus won the battle, and it was the end of the Ptolemies in Egypt. Augustus gave to his colonels and his head generals land in Nim, and he gave them, instead of giving oil and salt, he also gave them land. So because this city was built on the loss of Egypt, of Antony and Cleopatra of Egypt, we have the palm tree and the crocodile as a symbol. So we made the sail on an Egyptian sailboat. And also Cavafy has written about God abandons Antony, about the loss of the Ptolemies of Alexandria. This is another sail which is made I have done on it birds, and there are other sails which are shown on top of this sail, which I had bought in Marseille a long time ago. So we attached those sails, the textiles made out of the sail textiles on this sailboat, and it's birds, and how the birds have no boundaries. They can fly everywhere. It's not like humans, where everything is limited, while the birds can fly and they can walk. They are the only species who can do both. And I think they can swim too. This is Tagore, and it is the post office. And the post office, Tagore wrote about the separation and the moving of the capital from Calcutta to Delhi, and how the British tried to separate Bengal, to make it East and West Bengal. The capital moved, and it shows the child who is getting sick, which is the spirit of the country, and he is trying to find a solution about life. So he's asking to different people what they think. When he grows up, at the end he dies. And this is Tagore in different versions of the different people who these boys ask them questions. You know, the milkman, the cobbler, the wise man, the uncle, etc. And this is part of the Nim exhibition, which is Cleopatra sailing on the boats on the Nile, and it shows and the different religious characters, but we don't have it here, and how the Spanish people entered into Nim also, and they developed a kind of, so Nim became also Spanish. This is a Cavafy drawing, which we come back again because it fits in some ways to Nim, about God abandons Antony. And from this balcony here, he spoke about the carnival and how the carnival, there was a lot of sounds and singing and all this. It was the carnival of Alexandria, and people heard the loss of the country, how Egypt, Alexandria had fallen because God, Dionysos, abandoned Antony. So this is the bedroom and the rooms in which he was inspired to write such a poem of an incident that believed in Nim. This is the same thing as Cavafy. This is Cavafy. This is a general view of the Tagore exhibition. And Tagore lived at the same time as Cavafy, and he was as important. He won the Nobel Prize in 1913, and this is in the view in Manicalunga at Castello di Rivoli, with a video of Tagore, which is done by Satanjet Ray. This is a general view. And this is Jean Genet about the balcony, how people would listen to the balcony, to the would listen were in the interior, and they would have a different personalities attached, separated from what was happening outside, while the mob is screaming and shouting for liberation, and inside there is a totally different situation which is happening, which is about the colonization of Europe, of the Arab world, of the colonies, different colonies. This is a set on scissors, and this drawings is owned by the Van Abbe Museum, and it's about a book that I did, which is called the No-Name Book, because at that time when there was something terrorist, people would throw, they would make a very rudimentary bomb, and they would throw it without a name. And this shows that, and there is the difference of the different kind of religious as well as non-religious behavior, and the scissors, they speak, and they are the scissors and the nails which speak about torture, and the scissor is also taken symbolically as a human being, the iron face of the human being. And for example, in this one, it is an operation that is happening on a person with violence and without any kind of feeling, which is a very terroristic and violent behavior. This is the drawings from Istanbul Biennial that I did, the sole traders, and the drawings were exhibited in Van Abbe exactly in this manner, which is very different from anywhere else it was exhibited, because it makes like a wave, and you could see the drawings on both sides. This is in 2018, and it is at was exhibited at the Beaux-Arts in Paris. And it was done in the Beaux-Arts in Paris, and it is a chess game. So the work is based on the different personalities that there is in the world who shape the mentality of institutions and the mentality of being pro and against. So there were two groups, the ambiguous philosophers and the ambiguous politicians. That should say that unclear politicians and the unclear philosophers who fought against each other in a chess game. And this is, you see, Mandela, Napoleon, etc. There is also Queen Victoria, but I don't see it here. Yes. And this is the institution part, which the institution is very much based on the concept of philosophy and politics. And it's usually not very, it's usually ambiguous in the sense that, yes, it's unclear. And there is the mass and the institution, and the mass usually has not much, although they have elected the institution, the mass still is not so powerful as the institution. I'm going back. Yes, you see, this is the horseman for the chess game, and these are the soldiers that protect the institutions, and those were the sculptures that were in the niches in the Beaux-Arts, because it was in a very beautiful room, which is the I forgot the name. In a very beautiful room in the Beaux-Arts. It's a very big space covered with a lot of sculptures. This is part of a thing that I did in Tokyo, about the girls working for this, for producing, for the production of silk. This is 2018, Artis Mundi, and it's steel, and how the steel changed the face of the world, because you know the Industrial Revolution was created because of this making machinery out of steel, and also the steel created a total change in locomotion, in movement. It changed the whole face of the world, and this is an image of the steel factory in Wales, because the steel Wales is a very important port after, is a very important place for production of steel, which Tata bought, but then he joined it with support. This is during Documenta, and it is tents that I bought because I was going to put tents in the exhibition, but the space was not enough. So instead, there was a wooden construction, and the wooden construction was covered with the tent, so the tent became like drapery. And this was the interior of the wooden construction, and you could see the ear and the oyster and the beehives, etc., making an iconic, like an iconic temple, or a holy, yes, spectre.
Like altar.
Huh?
Like altar?
Like in the church, you know, altar.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And this is the sail that the students were doing, you know, and this sail became finished. When it became finished, it's very beautifully hung. This is the hung in Sharjah. These are collages that I did in 2017. Yes, it's about different, my reactions to the different political and social events of the world. This is another side. We have the cotton things, which was about the bloom of history of the loom of woven wings, the making of an economy, which I did for an exhibition in Santa Fe, which was curated by Philippa Day, and I think that was a very interesting concept, because this whole thing was about slavery and the slaves, how they worked for the production of making America, and how there was all this cotton plantation that started in the world, and how this cotton plantation, which was part of the Industrial Revolution, from which the Suez Canal was built for, you know, transportation of the cotton, where industrial technology was developed in Manchester for the production of clothing because people needed it, how Spain and Portugal sold slaves, and the slaves moved from Liverpool to Cuba to America, and how at that time Engels, whose father had a factory in Manchester, saw the condition and he wrote the Communist Manifesto. So there's a lot of incidents that happened around this cotton and textile, etc. I mean, it shaped the world for me. These are people, which is populism, and these are people fighting for their rights against populism. And populism is something that started with the Romans and continued to come up. For example, at the time of Mr. Trump, it was a populistic government, and there are many governments who are dictatorial and colonial and the military, who are in many ways populists. This become now too smart. Well, in the Congo, and Congo had no cotton, and Ghent became the center. They stole Ghent stole the jenny from the spinning jenny from England, to Ghent. But the cotton was to be imported from somewhere. So the cotton was brought from America. Then they thought it would be better to have it in Congo. And in Congo, they didn't know how to produce it well. So Texans went to Congo, and they taught the Congolese people how to plant. So that's why you have a lot of factories in Ghent, Florida, Texas, etc., while in Congo it is Texas. This is about the silk trade, how the loom of silk, which was at the end was Mr. Toyoda, who made this very brilliant personality, because he made the electric loom that functioned instead of the handmade, manual one. And from that, he found out the machine for the Toyota cars. America, and he learned, he did several, copied a lot of things, but also Mr. Toyota went all over the world, and he went to see how the looms work. And he progressed all the looms that were working in Europe at that time, and he made it into electric looms that work more automatic looms. This is the first Toyota car that he made. And this is, they are making the textile pieces. This is the cleaning of the cocoons. And all these were very, very young girls who went from their villages, and their parents were poor, so they sold their child. So the children would work from morning till night, from 5 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. They worked very hard, very little money, and that is how Japan went into the world market, because of these little girls who worked very, very hard, and they became, and they managed to create, to strengthen the economy of their country, and they made really they became the basis of modern Japan, the economy of the country, for 15-year-old children. See, they are washing all the cocoons, the little girls. And these are the mulberry trees, and from the mulberry trees, they took the leaves and they fed the many houses, and they bred the worms in their house, the silkworms. And the silkworm eat mulberry tree leaves. And these are the girls. They went from their village, and they had to cross very hard ships, very hard places, in the jungles, in water, in mountains, in very cold atmosphere, in very cold climate, with snowstorm. They managed to walk, and they arrived to their village in Gumba. And this is the basic of the silk trade, is the silk trade that started in the centuries previously, where silk went from China to Europe, and also from Japan eventually, because silk went from China to Korea, from Korea to Japan. You see? These are the little girls who came and worked in this factory by Mr. Paul Bruna, who made this, it's a very famous music. It's a very, I suddenly forgot, I'm sorry. It's a very famous in museum, I was going to say, it's a very important, industry or silk industry, manufacturing, where Mr. Paul Brunel became partners with the Japanese, that they met in America, in Europe, and they decided to open this factory, and they brought 5 girls from, or 10 girls from France, and they started to teach the young girls how to operate, and in Tomaica, the Tomaica factory. You see, these are the girls working, and the girls wrote poetry, how sad they were in these places that they dreamt the day they would go home. And many of them worked so hard that they never managed to return home, and some of them died, some of them committed suicide, but some stayed alive. So these are the these are the people who were like the cotton, you know, the cotton is silk. And these are the people who made the world. This is again, I'm going back to the 2018 Artis Mundi exhibition in Wales. And these are the people who work in the steel factories to make steel, and they have fights with administration, because usually in India and also in Wales, that the Tata would promise, but he never would fulfill it, especially when it came to pensions. You see, these are the locomotion. These are yes. These are the books, Global Iron and Steel. This is the meteor, of course, the title of this is called A Meteor Fell from the Sky. And this is because people would, and how people, when there was anything which was, a meteor has iron, it has gold, it has silver. And when the meteor fell, in the old times, during the iron and steel period, people would go on their, they would bow, they would think this is a very sacred object that fell from the sky. They would worship it. And the walls are red because of when you go into a factory of steel, it is all red and yellow. It's very, very hot. So it's very, very red and very, very yellow. It's very, very hot. And this is the beginning of the British Labour Party, where somebody took a knife and put a flag in a lamp and killed the lamp, and the blood became red. And that was the laborers, the steel factory workers demonstrating and showing, and it became the beginning of the Labour Party. You see? This is a real, an iron steel wheel. And this is how the work in the of silk's work, my exhibition on silk, was exhibited in Mori Museum. And this is a general view of the work that I did, as I said, of salt traders. And this is the salt traders. It's the globe where the boat went. It's about a person who was who died. But he never died, the sailor. He was alive. And he woke up after 1,000 years and found how the world had become. This is an exhibition which is done in the new museum, and it is also about populism. Yes. But there is the slave, you see, there are the different. This is replica. It was in Spain. This is where the tin drum lost its rhythm. It's about the tin factories and the tin production in St. Ives in Cornwall, where it's closed like coal was closed in England because of Mrs. Thatcher. And this is the drum, and how the world has, how Britain played the drums. You know, it was a military, a colonial, a kind of disciplined, a very strong way of moving people. And suddenly this movement of the drum, which was linked with power, with the land, with goals and initiatives, got lost. So England lost its rhythm. And this is a beehive construction. And the ear is inside. It's an acoustic acrylic. It is exhibited in SMAC. It was exhibited in SMAC. But it's also exhibited in different places. This is part of the loom of the history of how Irish people, after the slaves, the Irish moved to America, and how a lot of people took them on a ride, because they also became the cheap laborers of America. But they made money. The slaves didn't get money, but eventually the slaves got money, but the Irish were getting a little more. And this is, it says that, you know, Alexis de Tocqueville, he went to America in 1840, and he looked at he traveled all over to write his book on American democracy. And he found that America had no democracy, because in order to have democracy, you have to have equality among everyone. So there was no equality between the white and the black, between the man and the female, between between the Irish people and Anglo-Saxons who were there, etc. Like that. So he thought that there was no possibility, unless those possibilities were changed, there was no democracy in America except for the white Anglo-Saxon man. Whether he was poor or rich, he was equal. And this is the exhibition. It was the way it was exhibited in Santa Fe, the first one, with the jazz musicians. Although the jazz musicians came much later, but I thought it would be nice to put it, because somehow something fantastic came out for the people, for the cultivators. In the long run, they created a fantastic music. So that is worth seeing it. B.B. Jones and Beth, what was her name? The woman who sang during after the Civil War. I suddenly forgot her name. B.B. Jones, Johnny Halliday.
Oh, okay.
Her name was Johnny Halliday. Billie Holiday.
Oh, yes.
Billie Holiday. Anyway, I'm very sorry I forgot. And this is SMAC, and this is the exhibition on the cotton and the cotton plantations in the Congo, and how it was transported from Congo to Belgium, and how Ghent became the center of the industrial revolution on the mainland that went all over Europe eventually. I discussed this before. You see, the people went in the Congolese used to work for the production. Unlike the slaves, they were paid money, a little bit of money. So the Belgians would buy the cotton from them. But the people who really supported and made this is the Americans. They created the cotton. And then there was textile workers, and here. And this is a construction which was also in Nîmes. It's the Jardin de Plein Conscient. And I did this, I like these photographs in black and white because I wanted to see all these curves that happen and the birds and there is, and it's a poem that I have written, and the poem was on the wall here, and we put it with the letters. Can I have? So it's on the wooden piece. There is a whole poetry in metaphysics and how the world metaphysically change, and it is about how you say the man who changes things?
Electrician.
Huh?
Electrician.
No. You know the person who changes in metaphysical thing, the person who changes things, who has the power, alchemist, the alchemical changes in the world. And this is Cavafy. Again, it's about his Alexandria and the exterior of Alexandria. It's a pastel and black and white drawing. This is a work that I did in 2020 in Sydney, biennial. It's about the uprooted, and it's about violence and how people are uprooted, exiled, tortured, and killed, which is also part of the people from the indigenous people, for example, in North America, when they came to, they wanted their land for plantation, the white people would go and take them away, all the indigenous people, they had to go out because the land was going to be used for cotton plantation. So they were all uprooted without any say and without anything to do. So this is the way it was. This is an old electricity plant that was given to me, and I worked on this subject of how people were exiled, they were put into categories, they are put sometimes locked in spaces where they cannot have an exit. You see, there is always the physical power also of putting one, of wrestling, the sexual power of the people, and the human beings, the people are exiling and walking out in rows and rows, going nowhere, they don't know where they are going, what's happening, sitting in a box, like in a detention center. And this is a person is in a and the person has the power over him or her, and how he's trying to suffocate the world from them. And this is the church, according to Cavafy, where there are beautiful objects to be seen. And this is part of my biography, and it was exhibited in MoMA. And it is part of this water, where there is no water, that all we need is a glass of water, and it's the crisis of the Nile, which is in 2010 I did this, and how people have no voice. They are all covered, the voice is covered in barbed wire, and the military, etc., and how there is censorship, and how there is the power of cutting people's voice, of shutting up people. It's about the revolution of non-existing entity. And this is about the scissors again, and the different visions of the scissors. I mean, I don't have to explain everything, it becomes very tiring. And I think that this is, we ended up.